When I was 16, I lived in a small town in northern Illinois. The kind of place where nothing ever happened, and every kid swore they'd leave someday. There was this old abandoned house at the very end of Miller Road. Everyone knew about it. Everyone had a story. Some said a man had murdered his whole family there before shooting himself. Others said it used to be a halfway house where people went missing. But the truth? No one really knew. The place was just there, falling apart, forgotten. One October night, my friends and I decided we were finally going to check it out. There were 4 of us. Me, my best friend Tyler, and 2 girls from our class, Jess and Morgan. We were bored, half drunk on cheap beer, and chasing the thrill of being scared. We got there around midnight. The air was cold enough to see our breath. The road ended in gravel and weeds, and the house sat back behind a line of dead trees. Dark, leaning, and wrong somehow. It wasn't just abandoned. It felt empty in a way that hurt to look at. Tyler grinned. "Told you it's not that bad." Jess muttered, "It smells like rot." She wasn't wrong. Even from outside, the air stank. Damp wood, mold, something sour underneath it. We went in through the back. The door was already half off its hinges. The living room was full of old furniture covered in sheets, all gray with dust. Wallpaper peeled like dead skin. Every step we took echoed too loud. I tried to laugh it off, but something felt off balance. Like the house was holding its breath, waiting. We split up. Bad idea, I know. Tyler and Morgan went upstairs, while Jess and I checked the kitchen. There were dishes still in the sink, crusted solid with filth. A clock on the wall, hands frozen at 3:17. Jess whispered, "People really lived here." Before I could answer, we heard it. A loud thump from upstairs. "Probably Tyler," I said, though my voice didn't sound convinced. Then came another sound, a dragging noise, slow and uneven. Like something heavy being pulled across the floor. We froze. "Tyler?" Jess called out. No response. We moved toward the staircase. I'll never forget what I saw next. At the top of the stairs, in the faint beam of our flashlights, was a shape. It looked like a person standing just out of reach of the light. Tall, thin, shoulders slumped forward. I thought it was Tyler at first, until I realized the shape was completely still. Then in the dark, I heard Tyler's voice. Behind us. "Guys, what are you looking at?" We turned around. He was standing right next to us, holding a broken chair leg like a weapon. When we looked back at the stairs, the figure was gone. Jess started crying. I told everyone we should leave, but Morgan wasn't with us. We called for her. Nothing. Tyler ran upstairs while I stayed with Jess near the door. The house creaked all around us. The walls sounded like they were moving. Then Tyler screamed. I've never heard someone scream like that before. Not out of pain. Out of pure panic. I ran up after him, flashlight shaking. He was standing in a bedroom doorway, pale, shaking. On the wall in front of him, written in what looked like dried mud or blood, were 3 words. "Who let you in?" The window beside it was shattered, cold air pouring through. And lying on the floor beneath it was Morgan's jacket. But no sign of her. We tore through that house, calling her name. Every room colder than the last. We even searched outside, but she was just gone. Finally, Jess ran down the road to get cell signal and called the police. They searched for days, found her phone near the tree line, found her shoe in the ditch, but never found her. They ruled it as a runaway, but we knew better. That house wasn't empty. It was waiting. A month later, they tore it down. I drove past once. The lot was bare, just flattened dirt. But even then, something about it didn't look right. The ground looked darker there, wet, like it had soaked up something it shouldn't have. Years later, when I was home visiting family, I asked one of the deputies who'd worked the case if they ever found anything. He just stared at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "Sometimes, late at night, the dispatch line still gets calls from that address." I told him, "That's impossible. The house is gone." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's what makes it strange. Back in 2010, I packed my life into a dented 14-foot U-Haul and left New Orleans behind. I was 24, just me and my 2-year-old pit bull heading north toward Eugene, Oregon. No smartphone, no GPS, just a flip phone and a fat stack of printed MapQuest directions on the passenger seat. The kind of setup that makes you pray you don't miss a turn. Hours turned into days. The radio crackled through static. The road stretched endlessly. And by the time I hit Central Texas, I realized something awful. I was almost out of gas. The gauge was kissing empty, and I hadn't seen a single town or gas station for miles. Panic started building in my throat when, like a mirage, a small town appeared out of the desert haze. It didn't even look real. No name signs, no billboards. Just 6 or 7 faded streets, old wooden houses, and a gas station that looked like it hadn't seen business in decades. The place was too quiet, eerily still, as if the whole town was holding its breath. I pulled into the only station, filled up fast, and decided not to even go inside. I just wanted to get back on the highway. But when I tried to leave, I couldn't find the road back. No matter which direction I turned, every street looped back to the same cracked intersection. I drove in circles, 4 times, 5 times, passing the same shuttered store, the same broken mailbox. From some spots, I could see the highway, just a thin gray line on the horizon. But every road leading toward it ended abruptly in dead dirt. Frustrated and a little shaky, I finally went inside the gas station to ask for help. Behind the counter stood a tall, bony man with long, greasy black hair. He barely looked up from a magazine when I spoke. His voice was slow, distant, like he was repeating words he didn't believe himself. I asked how to get back to the highway, and without meeting my eyes, he said, "You'll need to take the Old South Road. Runs about 17 miles out. It curves around and meets the Interstate 17 miles." That made no sense. I hadn't even driven that far from the last main road. "Are you sure?" I asked. "It didn't feel that long." He shrugged, lips twitching like he wanted to laugh but couldn't quite. "Road curves around," he said again, eyes hidden behind his hair. Something inside me twisted tight. There was no single reason to be afraid, but every instinct in me screamed that something wasn't right. When I stepped back outside, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the ignition. The moment I sat down, my chest caved in and tears just came. I didn't even know why. Maybe exhaustion, maybe fear, or maybe it was the way that man's voice clung to me, cold and slow, like oil. And then a rumble. A beat-up red pickup truck pulled into the lot. The kind of old thing that looked like it had survived the end of the world. A broad man in a flannel shirt climbed out. Heavy boots, thick beard, kind eyes. He looked real. I jumped out before I even thought about it. "Sir, do you know how to get back to the highway?" I blurted. Probably too fast. He studied me for a moment, then smiled gently. Yeah, you're not the first to get turned around here, he said. There's a hidden turnoff just past that short concrete tunnel down the road. It's easy to miss. About a quarter mile away. You can almost see the highway from there. My stomach dropped. I told him about the gas station clerk's directions. The man's smile disappeared. He frowned, looking past me toward the station's dirty windows. He told you to take that road, he asked quietly. When I nodded, he stepped closer. You got a map? I showed him my stack of MapQuest printouts. He shook his head and went back to his truck, pulling out an old sun-faded road map. Spreading it across his hood, he traced a line with his finger, the one the clerk had mentioned. The road curved south, deep into empty desert, and just stopped. That road don't go anywhere, he said softly. Just some trailers, rusted cars, and people you don't want to meet. Folks who live out there keep to themselves, and for good reason. He hesitated, then added, That fella in the station? He lives out there. The wind shifted, carrying the faint rattle of the station's hanging sign. The desert was suddenly colder. The man, Texas, that's what I call him in my head, folded the map, met my eyes, and said, You were smart to trust your gut. Some roads ain't meant to be followed. He pointed me toward the hidden turnoff, and sure enough, a quarter mile later, there it was, half covered by weeds. Invisible unless you knew where to look. When my tires hit the smooth hum of the highway again, I looked in the mirror. The town was already gone, swallowed by the dust and heat. I never saw it on any map again. To this day, I don't know what that clerk wanted. Maybe it was just a bad instinct. Or maybe it was something darker waiting down that desert road. But I do know this. If I hadn't met that man in flannel, that stranger with a warm smile and a rusted truck, my story would have ended differently. He's still out there somewhere. Texas, my roadside angel in a dead town that shouldn't exist. I used to work night shifts at a small gas station off an old stretch of highway between Reno and Sacramento. It wasn't a busy spot. Most nights, I'd only get a few truckers and the occasional traveler too tired to keep driving. But one night, I saw something I still can't explain. Something I wish I could forget. It was late, around 3 a.m. The air outside was freezing, the kind of cold that burns your lungs when you breathe. I was refilling the coffee machine when headlights swept across the window. A car pulled in. An old black Buick, the kind you only see in vintage photos. The engine cut off, but no one got out. I waited, watching through the glass. The driver's silhouette sat perfectly still. After about a minute, I stepped outside, thinking maybe he needed help. I called out, Hey, you okay there? No answer. I took a few steps closer. That's when I noticed. The engine wasn't running, but I could still see exhaust coming from the tailpipe. A slow, steady puff of smoke, like the car was breathing. That's the best way I can describe it. I felt uneasy, so I backed away and went inside, locking the door behind me. I figured maybe the guy was asleep or drunk. Either way, not my problem. But around 10 minutes later, I heard the bell above the door ring. I looked up, and there he was, tall, thin, soaking wet, like he'd been standing in rain. Except it hadn't rained for days. His clothes were old, dark suit, white shirt, both stained with mud, and his skin. It looked pale, almost gray. He didn't say a word, just stared at me. I tried to sound normal. Long night, huh? Need some gas or coffee? He just blinked. Slowly, then said, in a voice that didn't sound quite right. Low, muffled, like someone speaking through water. Pump 4. Fill it up. I nodded, heart pounding. But when I looked out the window, there was no car at pump 4. Still, I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside, just to check. The lot was empty. Every pump was still. The black Buick was gone. I turned back toward the store and nearly dropped the nozzle. Through the window, I could see him standing inside at the counter where I'd just been. He was watching me. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. Then I ran back in. But the store was empty. No sign of him. No wet footprints, nothing. I told myself I was imagining things, maybe sleep deprived. But I couldn't shake it, that smell. The faint stench of wet dirt and something sour, like old decay. It lingered even after he vanished. A couple hours later, near dawn, a state trooper came in for coffee. I told him what happened, half laughing, trying to make it sound like a weird joke. He didn't laugh. Instead, he got real quiet and said, "Black Buick, you said?" "Yeah." He looked out toward the road and said, "There was a wreck out here a few months back. Middle of the night. Drunk driver hit a tree. Caught fire. Guy burned to death inside his car before anyone got there. My throat went dry." He went on. "They never moved the car. It's still out there, about 10 miles down. Locals say sometimes folks see headlights on that stretch, but when they drive closer, there's nothing." The officer finished his coffee and left. I tried to laugh it off again, but my hands were shaking too much. That morning, when my shift ended, I couldn't resist. I had to see for myself. So I drove down that highway, 10 miles out, like he said. The sun was barely up, fog hugging the ground. And then I saw it. Off to the side of the road, a blackened shell of a car, twisted metal and ash. The license plate was half melted, but one thing stood out. A keychain hanging from the mirror. A small red dice charm. The same one I'd seen swinging from the mirror of the Buick at the station. I turned off my engine and just sat there. I don't know how long. The air was heavy, silent. And then I heard it. A faint creaking sound, like a door hinge, the car door. It was moving. Slowly it opened just a few inches. That's when I saw a hand, pale gray, fingers stiff, press against the inside of the window. I floored it. I didn't look back. That was 3 years ago. I quit that job soon after. But sometimes, late at night, when I drive alone, I still see headlights in my rearview mirror. A black Buick, keeping pace. And no matter how fast I go, it never passes me. Just follows, steady, silent, like it's waiting. I was on the road for work, long drive, middle of nowhere, and the kind of exhaustion that makes your eyes burn. I didn't plan to stop, but the fog that night was unreal. It rolled in so thick it felt like driving through milk. So when I saw a flickering neon sign that read Red Oak Motel vacancy, I pulled in. The place looked like something out of a forgotten decade. Peeling paint, a broken ice machine, a few old cars parked under buzzing lights. But I didn't care. I just wanted a bed. The manager was a short, pale man with eyes that never seemed to blink. He gave me a key without a smile and said, "Room 12. Don't mind the noise from next door. Guy's been here a while." I nodded, signed the dusty guest book, and made my way down the narrow hall. Room 12 was small, cold, and smelled faintly of mildew. But again, I didn't care. I tossed my bag on the bed, turned on the heater, and crashed. It must have been around 2 a.m. when I woke up to the sound. A dull, rhythmic thud. Then again, and again. It was coming from the other side of the wall, the room next door. I tried to ignore it at first, telling myself it was the pipes, or maybe someone moving furniture. But it kept going, slow, steady, deliberate. Thud, pause, thud. After a few minutes, I couldn't take it anymore. I got up, put my ear to the wall, and that's when I heard it. A voice, faint, hoarse, almost a whisper. Help. Me. I froze. I leaned closer. The voice came again, barely audible through the wall. Please, someone, help me. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I threw on a hoodie and stepped outside. The hallway was dead silent, lit only by a flickering light near the ice machine. Room 11, the room next to mine, had its curtains drawn tight. The door was shut, but I could see a faint light leaking through the crack at the bottom. I hesitated for a second, then knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Louder. Still nothing, but the sound from inside hadn't stopped. The same muffled thuds. Then a soft dragging noise like someone crawling. That's when I noticed something strange. The door wasn't fully latched. It was slightly open. Hello? I called out, pushing it gently. The door creaked open a few inches, and the smell hit me first. A sour, metallic stench that made my stomach turn. Inside, the room was dark, except for the TV flickering with static. The sheets were torn, the floor stained with something dark and sticky. And in the middle of it was a chair, a single wooden chair, tied to it, a shape, a man, or at least what was left of him. His head hung low, blood matted in his hair, his hands tied behind the chair with duct tape. I stumbled back, gasping. My mind went blank. I couldn't move. Then suddenly, the man's head twitched. He was still alive. He lifted his head slowly, eyes barely open, lips trembling. He's still here, he whispered. Before I could even process it, I heard footsteps. Fast, heavy, coming down the hall. Instinct took over. I darted out, slammed the door, and pressed myself against the wall just as someone turned the corner. It was the motel manager. But something was wrong. His eyes were wide, his face expressionless, and in his hand, a hammer. What are you doing? He asked softly, voice too calm. I stammered something about hearing noises, about the man in the room, but he didn't even look at me. Instead, he looked at the door to room 11 and said, almost to himself, he wasn't supposed to wake up yet. Then he smiled. That kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. I didn't wait. I ran. Down the hall, through the lobby, straight into the parking lot. I jumped into my car and turned the key. Nothing. Dead engine. The manager stepped out of the hallway behind me, hammer in hand, walking slow, calm, like he'd done this before. I slammed my fist against the wheel, tried again. The engine sputtered, then caught. I hit the gas so hard the tires screeched. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing under the motel sign, just watching me go. That blank, unblinking stare. I drove until sunrise, until the fog cleared, and I found the nearest gas station. I called the police and told them everything. The body, the man, the room number, the motel's name. The officer on the line was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Sir, are you sure about the name? Red Oak Motel?" "Yes," I said, "off Highway 73, near the old bridge." He sighed. "That place burned down 3 years ago. Owner died in the fire." I froze. He went on, "There's nothing there now. Just a ruin. You must have stopped somewhere else, but I know what I saw. The sign, the key, the man in the chair, the blood, the smell. And when I checked my pocket later, I found it. The key to room 12. Cold, rusted, and covered in ash. It was late August 2015. The kind of night where the ocean feels endless and the air tastes like salt. I was camping alone near the Oregon coast, parked in my small camper at a nearly empty beachside campground. The summer tourists had all gone home, and only 2 other RVs sat in the lot, both dark and quiet. I wasn't afraid of being alone. I'd done solo trips before. The stillness of the ocean always calmed me. That rhythmic sound of waves folding over themselves, the distant hiss as they pulled back. But that night, something about the quiet felt wrong. I'd gone for a walk just after sunset. The air was still warm, and the tide was low, leaving long stretches of wet sand that gleamed under the moonlight. I followed the shoreline until I spotted an old wooden shack sitting just beyond the dunes. It looked abandoned, broken windows, door hanging off its hinges. Probably an old fisherman's shed, I thought. Curiosity got the better of me. I walked closer, flashlight in hand, but as soon as I stepped within 20 feet, Daisy, my pit bull, stopped dead. Her tail lowered, ears pinned back. She started to growl low and steady, staring directly at that shack. "Hey," I whispered, tugging her leash. "It's fine, girl." Just an old building, but she wouldn't move. Her growl deepened into a rumble that vibrated through the leash. That's when I saw movement. Just a flicker. Behind one of the broken windows, a shadow slipping past the cracked wood. I froze. The shack was completely dark inside, but someone was in there, watching. My skin went cold. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, so I backed away, keeping my eyes on that window. I could feel something, a presence, like the weight of eyes pressing against me even as I turned toward the beach. I didn't run until Daisy suddenly barked, loud and sharp. When I looked back, the shack's door had shifted, just slightly. We sprinted. The sand kicked up beneath my boots as I ran full speed down the shoreline. My flashlight beam shook wildly, catching glimpses of dunes and driftwood. I didn't stop until I reached the faint glow of my camper's porch light. By the time I slammed the door shut, I was shaking so hard I could barely lock it. Daisy jumped up onto the seat by the window, barking at the darkness beyond the dunes. Nothing moved out there. No footsteps. No sound except the wind and the ocean. I tried to calm myself. Told myself it was probably some homeless person squatting there. Or maybe just my imagination, twisting shadows into something worse. But deep down, I knew what I'd seen. That wasn't an animal. And it wasn't my mind playing tricks. An hour passed. I sat on the edge of my bed. The camper lights dimmed, Daisy curled at my feet. The waves outside had grown louder, like a constant distant roar. Then, a soft sound broke through it. Knock, just one, not on the door but on the window beside me. My breath caught. Daisy's head snapped up, a growl bubbling in her chest. Knock, this time slower, louder. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Whoever or whatever was outside was inches away from my face, separated only by thin glass and a trembling curtain. I slowly reached over and turned off the last lamp. The camper fell into darkness. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out the waves. Then came the sound of footsteps, crunching sand, circling the camper. Slow, deliberate. They paused near the door, then retreated. For several long minutes, nothing. I waited until I could hear the ocean again, until my body stopped shaking enough to reach for my phone. No service. Of course, I sat awake until sunrise, gripping the handle of a kitchen knife and staring at that same window. The knocks never came again. When daylight finally pushed through the curtains, I stepped outside. My mouth went dry. There were footprints, clear as day, circling the camper. Large, bare footprints, each one pressed deep into the sand. They led toward the dunes and straight back to the shack. I packed up and left within 10 minutes, engine roaring as I tore out of that lot. 2 days later, I stopped at a small gas station 50 miles north. The old man behind the counter noticed my camper and asked if I'd stayed down by Seabright Beach. "Yeah," I said, "a couple nights ago." He gave me a strange look. "You didn't go near that shack, did you?" I froze. "Why?" He shook his head. "Local kids found something out there last month. Old clothes, bones. Sheriff said it was probably just an animal, but..." He trailed off, eyes distant. "You hear things in those dunes. People going missing, campers packing up in the middle of the night." I didn't say anything, just paid for my gas and left. Now, whenever I smell sea salt and wet sand, I think about that shack. The dark figure behind the broken window. The knocks on the glass. The bare footprints in the morning light. And I remember Daisy's growl, low and certain. The one I should have listened to sooner. It was late October of 2018. My girlfriend, Rachel, and I were driving through the back roads of northern Idaho after spending the weekend camping near Priest Lake. The sky was already darkening, a dull gray fading into night, and our GPS had lost signal miles ago. We weren't too worried. We had a paper map and a full tank of gas. But the forest around us was dense, the kind where the trees crowd close and swallow the headlights. The two-lane road twisted endlessly, no signs, no mile markers, just black asphalt and shadows. After nearly an hour without seeing another car, I noticed something ahead. A dim orange glow flickering on the shoulder of the road. As we got closer, we saw it was a car. Hood up, hazard lights blinking weakly in the dark. A man stood beside it, waving his arm. Rachel leaned forward. "Should we stop?" I hesitated. He looked normal enough, maybe in his 40s, wearing jeans and a flannel. But something about the way he waved, slow, almost too calm, made me uneasy. Still, it was freezing out, and it didn't feel right to just drive past someone stranded in the woods. I slowed the car, rolled down my window, halfway. "You all right, man?" I called. He stepped closer, staying just outside the beam of my headlights. "Battery's dead," he said. His voice was deep but flat, like he was forcing himself to sound polite. "Any chance you could give me a jump?" Rachel whispered. "Please, let's just go." I glanced at her. "We'll be quick," she sighed, nervous. I popped the trunk, grabbed the jumper cables, and got out. The air bit cold against my skin. The man smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. He stood too still, hands in pockets, head tilted just slightly. "Appreciate it," he said softly. I nodded and walked toward his car. It was an old, dark sedan, coated in dust. No license plate. That stopped me for a second. "Hey," I said, keeping my tone casual. "You just get this thing?" He didn't answer. When I got close enough, I noticed something else. The hood was up, but there were no jumper cables, no tools, nothing. And the engine looked fine. No smoke, no smell, nothing out of place. That's when I saw movement in my car's side mirror. Someone else. A second figure, stepping out from behind the trees on the other side of the road. My heart slammed in my chest. Rachel yelled, "Mark, get in the car." I turned back. The man who'd asked for help was closer now. Too close. His expression had changed, the polite mask gone. His eyes were wide, dark, empty. I dropped the cables and bolted for the driver's seat. Rachel already had the door unlocked. I jumped in, slammed it shut, and hit the gas so hard the tires screeched. The headlights cut across the road. And for a split second, I saw them both standing there, just watching us go. No shouting, no chasing, just still silhouettes against the tree line. We didn't talk for a long time. My hands were trembling on the wheel, and Rachel was crying quietly beside me. After 15 minutes, we finally found a sign for the highway and turned onto it, heading toward a small diner that stayed open late. When we pulled in, I went straight inside to call the sheriff. The deputy who answered sounded tired but alert. I told him everything. The fake breakdown, the missing license plate, the second person hiding in the woods. He listened, then asked, "Where exactly did you say this was?" I gave him the closest landmark I could remember. There was a long pause. "Sir," he said slowly, "you didn't stop near mile marker 19, did you?" I felt my stomach drop. I think so, yeah," he sighed. "We've had a few reports out there the past month. Same description. Stranded car, man asking for a jump. 2 hikers went missing after stopping to help. We never found their vehicle." I just sat there, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles went white. When I looked outside, Rachel was standing by the car, staring toward the woods beyond the parking lot. "Hey," I said, stepping out. "What's wrong?" Her face was pale. "There's something out there," she whispered. I followed her gaze, and my heart nearly stopped. Parked across the street, half hidden by the trees, was a dark sedan. Hood up, no headlights, and just visible through the windshield. Someone sitting behind the wheel, perfectly still. It started like any other night. The kind of night where silence hangs so thick, you can almost hear your heartbeat echo against the walls. I was home alone. My parents were away for the weekend, and I had the entire house to myself. At first, it felt freeing. I ordered pizza, watched a few movies, and scrolled mindlessly through my phone. But as the clock crept past midnight, that comfort began to fade into something else, something heavier. It began with the phone. A single call, no caller ID, just unknown number. I hesitated. I never answer those. But something about that ringing, sharp, cold, and endless, got under my skin. I picked up. "Hello?" Static. Then a faint, distorted whisper. "Why, did you leave the door open?" I froze. My eyes darted toward the front door. It was shut, locked, or at least, I thought it was. "Who is this?" I said, trying to sound calm. The line went dead. For a while, I just stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, waiting for something. Anything, but nothing came. I told myself it was a prank. Some random creep with a voice changer. Then, about 10 minutes later, another call. Same number, same silence. Only this time I didn't say a word. I just listened. And through the faint hiss of static, I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. The sound of breathing. Slow, deep, inside the phone. I hung up instantly. My hands were trembling as I walked toward the front door, just to be sure. The lock was in place. Everything seemed fine. But as I turned to walk back, I noticed it. The back door. It was open at just an inch. The cold air slipped through the gap, brushing against my skin. I felt my throat tighten. I'd been sitting just a few feet away from that door for hours, and it had been shut before. I slammed it shut and locked it, then went around the house checking every window. Everything else was secure. Maybe I'd forgotten. Maybe the delivery guy didn't close it properly. I kept repeating that to myself, like it was some kind of spell to push the fear back down. But that illusion shattered when the phone rang again. I didn't want to answer, but my hand moved on its own, trembling, shaking, like I needed to know what came next. "Stop calling me," I snapped. This time there was no whisper, no breathing, just a laugh, low, raspy, way too close to the microphone. Then the voice said, "I'm already inside." I dropped the phone. It hit the floor with a dull thud, the screen lighting up one last time before going black. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I grabbed the nearest thing, a kitchen knife, and ran upstairs. My instinct told me to hide, to stay quiet. I slipped into my bedroom and locked the door. Then I crawled under the bed, clutching the knife so tight my knuckles went white. For a few minutes, there was nothing. Just my own breath, my own heartbeat. Then came the footsteps. They were soft at first, barefoot, slow, moving through the hallway below. Each step creaked on the old wooden floorboards. Deliberate, patient, like whoever it was knew exactly where I was. I tried not to move, not to breathe. The footsteps climbed the stairs. One step, then another, then another. They stopped right outside my bedroom door. The silence that followed was worse than any sound. I could hear the faint rattle of the doorknob, the quiet creak of the door pushing against the lock. Then, a whisper. "Why are you hiding?" It wasn't coming from outside the door. It was coming from inside the room. I froze. Every muscle in my body screamed not to look, but I couldn't help it. I turned my head ever so slightly and saw feet, bare, pale feet, standing on the carpet beside my bed. I wanted to scream but couldn't. The air felt too thick to breathe. The feet turned slowly until they were facing me. Then a hand, long, bony fingers, reached down and brushed against the floor, stopping just inches from my face. That's when my phone buzzed again from under the bed. The screen lit up. Unknown number. Incoming call. The sound gave me away. The figure bent down, peering under the bed. And for a split second, I saw the face. Eyes wide and empty, mouth stretched too far, like it had been smiling for hours. I swung the knife, hit something. I don't even know what. The figure screamed. This horrible animal sound. And I bolted. I ran down the stairs, out the front door, into the street barefoot and shaking. The neighbors found me outside minutes later, crying and clutching the knife like my life depended on it. The police came. They searched the house top to bottom. They found the back door lock broken from the inside. And upstairs they found a small bloody trail that led to the attic. Inside, they discovered a sleeping bag, empty food wrappers, and an old phone, one that could spoof caller IDs. Whoever that was had been living in our attic for weeks. And those calls? They weren't to scare me. They were to see if I was awake.